Do you believe your father's accusers?
I think it's a pretty inappropriate question to ask a daughter if she believes the accusers of her father when he's affirmatively stated that there's no truth to it. I don't think that's a question you would ask many other daughters.
But Ivanka Trump is a senior White House advisor. She's also the first daughter, and depending on the situation of the day, she's made clear that she thinks she can jump from one to the other. Take this past week, the self-proclaimed force for good in the administration didn't comment on her father's policy of separating families at the border until after the president signed the executive order stopping it. Here's her tweet. Thank you, POTUS, for taking critical action ending family separation at our border. Congress must now act and find lasting solution that is consistent with our own shared values, the same values that so many come here seeking as they endeavor to create a better life for their families. Joining us at the table is Emily Jane Fox, senior reporter for Vanity Fair, an MSNBC contributor and author of a brand new book out this week, Born Trump, Inside America's First Family. Buy it, read it, love it. Tell us what Ivanka is up to.
You know, I was asking around this week saying, why is she being silent on this issue? These are people who advise her on these kinds of things, whose advice she seeks out. And they said to me, she came to us over the weekend or early this week and said, should I say something? And they all were like, how could you not say something? Of course you should say something. This is the biggest no-brainer of all time. And yet she stayed silent. And the only explanation I can give you is what I reported in the book. And she just has this twisted relationship with her father where she will never really speak up against him. And we've only seen her do it one time in the entire time she's been in the White House and even throughout the campaign. And it was with Roy Moore. And he was furious with her after that. And it seems to me that her father's reaction to her is more important than the advocacy that she came to Washington to do and that she's been spending the last year and a half doing.
I want to ask you, I want to press you a little bit on the idea of her brand. I don't totally get what that means, but she does. And she's got this Instagram page, and her brand always seems to feature pictures of her as a mother, of her speaking about women's empowerment. How does she, as the steward of her own brand, match up being complicit and or silent to a policy that literally tore infants from their mother's arms?
Well, there's a unique trait that some people in the Trump family have where they kind of color their own reality and then tend to believe it. So this is something that the president has, where he says something enough times and then actually believes it even though it's not true. And I think that sometimes Ivanka Trump has the same syndrome where she says, I'm an advocate, I'm an advocate, I'm an advocate, even though there's no instance where she's actually been an effective advocate in the White House. And so she believes it. But there was a few weeks ago, she posted a photo with her young son, and it was a beautiful photograph, but it happened to be the exact same time that everything at the border was starting to happen. And she caught a lot of heat for that. And people around her, I asked, like, doesn't she know by now to not post that kind of photo? And they were like, you know, she just wasn't aware of what was going on with the policy. She wasn't caught up on it yet, and she feels really badly, which is the same.
Caught up in it. It was all over television. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't. I mean,
this is what happens. She has this spin machine and ability to try and duck and weave, and this week she has not been able to duck and weave around it.
It's time to draw a box around the idea of her as an advisor to the president.
Okay.
She has no policy experience and no experience in government. She is her father's daughter. Her experience is in selling real estate and handbags. So she has no authority she can draw on as a policy expert. Her power is entirely dependent on the power her father gives her. And if he chooses not to listen, that's it. That's the end of it. The idea that she would be an offset to him on policy was always a weird fantasy of New York elites. It was never going to be true. It was never going to happen.
So Ivanka Trump gets to enjoy the power and prestige of a White House staff position, a high-ranking White House staff position, yet we have absolutely no idea what she does every day. Over the course of reporting your book, do you have a clear sense? What's her schedule every day? What kind of meetings does she attend? What kind of policy outreach does she have to, at agencies about women and children? What does she actually do?
I would say that she believes her chief accomplishment in her time in the White House has been getting the child care tax credit in the tax reform bill. She spends time going to Capitol Hill. She talks about after-school sports. There's a narrow set of issues that she cares about, that she has made some inroads into. But when it comes to these big issues, the thing that everyone around her thought she was going to make to be able to influence her father on. It's failed every single time, and it's left a lot of people disappointed.
You've got some new reporting today, Ivanka.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is that consistent silence that, she didn't speak up after Charlottesville. She didn't do this. Yes, she didn't call some lawmakers in recent days to try to come up with on this issue saying this is something bad. Yes, she did talk to her father, but her voice seems to carry no more weight than any other senior advisor. And perhaps she could have changed that were she to speak out publicly, but she didn't. She kept her silence, only deciding to post on Twitter after it was over for some sort of absurd victory lap, thanking her father for ending a policy that he's the one who enforced in the first place and created this crisis. And it's, she is less of a target of some of the others in the West Wing that she used to be since the Steve Bannon faction was moved out. But there are plenty of people who work in that building who wonder, the chief of staff is one of them, what Ivanka Trump does every day.
He wonders that about Jared Kushner as well. I want to put up an excerpt from the book, Born Trump, Inside America's First Family. Ivanka was a preteen when she saw her media-obsessed father leave her mother, and her brothers for Marla, and witness how he lit up or blew up, depending on how the press depicted him. I mean, if there's a through line to Donald Trump, you just got it right there. And you go on. She carried the burden of wondering if her father would leave again or love her still, and knew full well that one way to endear her to him forever was for him to read about her in the paper, particularly if she could make him money while getting her name in print at the same time. I'm speechless.
There is a whole chapter in my book about how the way in which Donald and Ivanka are the most similar are the ways that they try to manipulate the media. And part of the reason that is so important to Ivanka is because she knows that is the calling card and the ultimate prize in her father's eyes. That's why she's the favorite. And it is something that when we question why she doesn't speak out, that is the answer. It's just it.
But what about sort of this pathology of thinking, wondering if her father would leave again or love her still, and the only way she could secure that was to have him read about her in the newspaper?
Well, the reality was when her father left for another woman, she would ask her mother, am I still going to be Ivanka Trump? Is Trump going to be my last name? She would call him over and over and over again, more than when he lived in the apartment, because she was worried that he was going to abandon them. And so she knew, this is someone when she went to boarding school, her father would send her press clippings about himself or about her. She knew how important that was. All of the kids know how important that is to President Trump. And so that is one sure way to endear her father to her.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.